Our vehicle drives down the scene now, and when we press play, we have this nice tint to show us that we're in play mode, and we have our camera following, but right now, we still can't really control our vehicle. It just drives all the way down the road, just running all these obstacles over, pushing them off, and then eventually it gets to the end of the road, and then it just falls straight off. That's just because there's not an end there, but we need to be able to control this vehicle's movement. So first, we need to be able to move our vehicle so that it avoids the obstacles. If we open our player controller script, we're going to need a way to control our vehicle to move left or right. So we should probably just use a variable to do that, since we know it's probably pretty bad to just use a random number. So good to think ahead in general. We're going to make this a public variable so that we can control it just like we did with the speed. It will also be a float because we'll be using decimal points. And then we're just going to call it turn, lowercase t, capital S for speed. So you can see here turn speed has different capitalization. So this is a very standard, what is called a naming convention when you're programming. So for variables, we often use lowercase letters like speed, turn speed, even transform is a variable to be able to very easily see when we're using a class or when we're using an object, when we're using methods, or when we're just using variables. Now we want to be able to move our vehicle left or right, so we'll do something similar to what we did with our transform.translate. Instead of a vector3 forward, we can actually use, there's a whole bunch of other options for vector3, so we can actually use like right. So this will move our vehicle in the right direction. Again, we're going to multiply by time.delta time, because we want to be able to update this position over time instead of once every frame. And then we multiply by that handy turn speed variable that we made before. So now in our game, if we take a look down at our game view and we select our vehicle so we can see the values, if we press play, nothing's happening. Well, that's actually because we're multiplying by a 0. So actually, if we click on turn speed and drag it to the right, it'll actually start turning right if it's positive. If we go to the left, it'll start going to the left because the value's negative. So easy way to see how we can move our vehicle left or right. Now that's great, but we'll need to be able to also control it as well. But first, what you're going to do in your player controller script, create your own turn speed variable. We'll make it public so we can play around with it in the editor. Make it a float because it will be a decimal value. And then in your update method, we're going to add another transform. This time we're translating with vector3 right. So we're using our right vector. And then we multiply it by time, so that way it updates over time instead of every frame. And then we multiply it by our turn speed variable. So then, when we play, if we click on our vehicle in the hierarchy, we can actually click and drag the turn speed so that it moves left and right. Now it's your turn.